"Ma'am, step aside, you're not allowed in here." The words snapped through the air as the receptionist blocked Evelyn Reed with an outstretched arm, her eyes dripping with the certainty that a black woman in a hoodie could never belong in a premium lounge. Passengers slowed. A supervisor appeared. A wealthy customer chimed in, sneering loud enough for the crowd to hear. Evelyn felt the familiar burn of public humiliation, but she didn't argue. She simply reached into her bag, not for her ticket, not for her ID, but for the badge that would end 3 careers and rewrite the airline's future. They thought she didn't belong. They were about to learn she owned the room. Dr. Evelyn Reed felt the dull throb of the aircraft's engines in her bones. A phantom vibration that lingered long after she'd stepped onto the jet bridge. She was connecting through London Heathrow Terminal 5, a sprawling universe of duty-free perfume and hurried footsteps. Her body was on London time, but her mind was still somewhere over the Atlantic processing data from the Lagos Tech Summit she had just keynoted. She was not a stranger to travel. As a PhD in logistical engineering and a non-executive director on the board of Transatlantic Airways, travel was her native state. But this trip had been different. It was a grueling 48-hour sprint of speeches, negotiations, and mentoring sessions for her foundation, which funded STEM education for young women in West Africa. She hadn't slept in what felt like days. She moved with the river of passengers, her carry-on suitcase gliding silently beside her. She had deliberately dressed for comfort on the long-haul flight, soft black jeans, a simple grey hoodie from her alma mater, and sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a neat protective style. She was anonymous, just another tired face in the crowd, and for a few minutes she relished it. But the anonymity was a luxury she couldn't afford for long. She had a 4-hour layover before her final flight to New York, and a critical TAA board meeting was scheduled to take place during that layover. It was a hybrid meeting. Most of the board would be in the New York headquarters, but she and 2 other European-based directors would be joining from the secure video conferencing suite inside the flagship TAA Summit Lounge. The thought of the lounge was a beacon. She wasn't thinking of the champagne or the gourmet canopies. She was thinking of the high-backed armchair in the quiet zone, the fast, secure Wi-Fi, and the powerful hot shower in the private cabana. She needed to wash the exhaustion of the red-eye flight from her skin change into a business suit and mentally prepare the sharp, critical points she had for the meeting's agenda. The airline was facing stiff headwinds from rising fuel costs and a recent embarrassing IT failure that had grounded 300 flights. Today's meeting was not a formality. It was a battle. She followed the pristine signs for first-class lounges, her footsteps quickening slightly. She was Dr. Evelyn Reed, a woman who had broken barriers in academia and, in the boardroom, a person whose insights could shift corporate policy and whose vote could install or depose a CEO. But as she approached the gleaming glass facade of the Summit Lounge, she was just a black woman in a hoodie, and the woman at the reception desk saw nothing else. The desk was manned by 2 people. A younger man, polite and focused, was processing a family. The other was a woman in her late 40s with a sharp blonde bob and a TAA name badge that read, Rebecca Guest Services Supervisor. Evelyn waited in line, shifting her weight. When the family moved on, she stepped forward, placing her passport and her first-class boarding pass for TAA Flight 117 to JFK on the marble counter. Rebecca was typing furiously, her eyes glued to her monitor. She didn't look up, not for 5 seconds, not for 10. She finished her email, sighed dramatically as if put upon, and finally lifted her chin. Her eyes swept over Evelyn, a slow, dismissive appraisal that started at her sneakers and ended on her face. The professional smile that had been in place for the previous passengers evaporated, replaced by a tight, thin line. "Can I help you?" Rebecca asked. Her tone wasn't helpful. It was a challenge. "Yes, good morning," Evelyn said, her voice a little from the dry cabin air. She gently pushed her boarding pass forward. "I'm flying TAA 117, just heading in to prepare for a meeting." Rebecca did not touch the boarding pass. She didn't even look at it. She looked past Evelyn as if searching for the actual passenger Evelyn was accompanying. "I'm sorry," Rebecca said, her voice dripping with artificial politeness, "but this lounge is reserved for our first class and platinum tier guests only." Evelyn blinked. The implication was so immediate, so blatant, that it took her a second to process. "I know," Evelyn said calmly, tapping the ticket. "I'm flying first class. My boarding pass is right here." Only then did Rebecca deign to look down. She picked up the boarding pass with 2 fingers as if it was soiled. She scanned it, her eyes narrowed. The system beeped its approval. The screen would have flashed first class in large green letters, along with Evelyn's name and status. But Rebecca's face only hardened. She had been proven wrong on her first assumption that this woman couldn't possibly be a premium passenger, and it clearly infuriated her. She would have to find another reason. "I see," Rebecca said, slowly placing the boarding pass back on the counter. She did not, Evelyn noted, scan it to grant her entry. However, the Summit Lounge maintains a strict dress code to ensure the comfort and business-ready atmosphere for all our guests. She gestured to a small silver-plated sign on the counter. "Management reserves the right to refuse entry. Smart casual attire is required. No sportsier tracksuits or beachwear." Evelyn looked at her own clothes jeans and a university hoodie. Comfortable, yes, but hardly a tracksuit. She had seen dozens of men in identical attire jeans, hoodies, baseball caps, breeze into this very lounge on previous trips. "I've travelled in this exact outfit before, and never had an issue," Evelyn stated. Her voice was still quiet, but a thin wire of steel had entered it. "I'm simply coming in to use the shower facilities and change into my suit for a board meeting." Rebecca's smile returned, this time full of unconcealed condescension. "A board meeting? That's very nice, but our policies are in place for a reason. We can't have the standards of the lounge degraded. Sportsier is not permitted." She tapped the word hoodie as if it were a dirty word. "This is not sportsier." Evelyn said, her patience fraying. "It's a sweatshirt, and I am a paying first-class passenger." "Rebecca." The younger agent at the next podium glanced over, looking uncomfortable. He had finished with his guests and could clearly sense the tension. Rebecca shot him a look that could freeze fire. "I am handling this, Daniel." She turned back to Evelyn. "As I said, I cannot permit you entry dressed like this. It's not the environment we cultivate. The word we hung in the air, a clear statement of people like us versus people like you." The humiliation was sharp and public. Passengers were walking by, some glancing over. Evelyn felt her cheeks burn. She was being gate-kept, turned away like a lost child, not the board member who reviewed this lounge's quarterly profit and loss statements. "This is unacceptable," Evelyn said, her voice dangerously low. "I need to speak to your manager immediately." Rebecca's smirk widened. It was the "I'd like to speak to the manager" line she had clearly heard 1,000 times and relished denying. "Mr. Henderson is very busy, I'm afraid, but he will only tell you the same thing. The rules are the rules. I am not asking. I am telling you." "Get your manager," Evelyn said. Rebecca's eyes flashed with anger. This black woman wasn't backing down and becoming tearful. She was holding her ground. With a dramatic put-upon sigh, Rebecca picked up her desk phone. "Mr. Henderson," she said into the receiver, her voice suddenly sweet and victimized. "This is Rebecca at the front desk. I have a passenger here who is refusing to accept our dress code policy." Yes, she is becoming rather aggressive. Evelyn's blood went from simmering to boiling. Aggressive, the classic loaded term. She stood perfectly still, her hands resting calmly on her carry-on, the very picture of composure. She would not give them the satisfaction of a reaction. She would simply let the lie hang in the air, waiting to be exposed. The frosted glass door beside the reception desk slid open, and a man in a slightly too tight suit emerged. This was Mr. Henderson. He was a man who looked like he had been poured into his clothes and had settled uncomfortably. He had a perpetually worried expression, but his eyes were sharp and unsympathetic. He walked over, adjusting his Tower-branded tie, and completely ignored Evelyn, speaking directly to his subordinate. "What seems to be the trouble, Rebecca?" His voice was oily, a practiced veneer of managerial concern. This person, Rebecca said, gesturing to Evelyn as if she were a piece of lost luggage, is insisting on entry. I have repeatedly explained our smart casual dress code, but she won't accept it. She claims to have a board meeting. Rebecca delivered the last two words with a skeptical eye roll, a shared joke with her boss. Only then did Mr. Henderson turn his gaze on Evelyn. It was the same dismissive scan she had received from Rebecca. He saw her jeans, her hoodie, her sneakers, and his mind snapped shut like a bear trap. He saw a liability, not a customer. "Good morning," Evelyn said, forcing a level of civility that was costing her dearly. "My name is Dr. Evelyn Reed. I am a first-class passenger on TAA 117. I have a 4-hour layover during which I am scheduled to attend a TAA board meeting from your conference suite. I need to get in shower and change. Your employee is blocking me based on a dress code that I have seen selectively enforced here for years." She was concise. She was professional. She gave him every piece of information he needed to diffuse the situation. Apologize and wave her through. Mr. Henderson, however, chose a different path. He clasped his hands behind his back, adopting the stance of a disappointed headmaster. "Dr. Reed is it," he said, with a slight emphasis that suggested he doubted the title. "While I appreciate your plans, Rebecca is quite correct. Transatlantic Airways has invested millions in creating a premium professional environment for our most valued clients. It is my job to protect that environment. If I let you in wearing that, what sort of precedent does it set? I'd have to let everyone in. The standards would collapse." "The standards," Evelyn repeated, her voice incredulous. "I am not everyone. I am your customer. A first-class customer. Are you telling me that my ticket, which costs over $9,000, is invalid because of my sweatshirt?" "Your ticket," Mr. Henderson said slowly, as if speaking to a difficult child, "entitles you to fly. It does not entitle you to disregard our policies. Rebecca is one of my finest supervisors. If she is determined that your attire is not appropriate, then I must support her judgment." "So you are refusing me entry?" Evelyn asked. The question was a block of ice. "We are not refusing you," Mr. Henderson said, spreading his hands in a gesture of false magnanimity. "We are simply asking you to comply. If you have a change of clothes in your checked luggage, perhaps he knew full well she couldn't access her checked luggage. It was a deliberate, insulting solution. "My suit is in my carry-on bag," Evelyn said, tapping the Toomey suitcase at her feet. "As I told your employee, I intend to change inside the lounge's shower suites." "Ah, but you see, that's the problem," Rebecca chimed in, sensing victory. "We can't have people changing in the main terminal restrooms and then coming in, and we can't let you interchange. It's a catch-22, isn't it?" Her smile was openly mocking. It was at that moment that a third voice joined the fray. "Is there a problem here? Some of us are trying to relax." A woman in a cream-colored cashmere tracksuit dripping with gold jewelry had walked over from the lounge entrance. She held a glass of champagne in one hand. She was in her 60s with a face pulled taut by surgery and disapproval. This was Mrs. Prescott, a Platinum for Life member who treated the Summit Lounge as her personal living room. Mr. Henderson's entire demeanor changed. He spun around, his face suddenly wreathed in a terrified, obsequious smile. "Mrs. Prescott, my deepest apologies. No problem at all. Just a small misunderstanding we are handling." Mrs. Prescott's eyes, as sharp and cold as a hawk's, landed on Evelyn. Her nose wrinkled. "Well, it doesn't look like a misunderstanding," she drawled, her voice cutting through the terminal's hum. "It looks like you're letting the standard slip, Henderson. I pay a small fortune to maintain my status, and I do so precisely to avoid this." She waved her champagne flute in Evelyn's direction. "This isn't a public bus station. This is the Summit Lounge. If she can't be bothered to dress appropriately, she should go to one of the pay-in lounges or Starbucks." The public humiliation was now complete. Evelyn was being attacked from all sides, defended by no one. "Mum, this is a private conversation." Evelyn said her words aimed at Mrs. Prescott, but her eyes boring into Mr. Henderson. "And you," she said to him, "no lounge." Instead of admonishing the other passenger, Mr. Henderson became even more flustered. He was clearly terrified of Mrs. Prescott, a famously difficult and high-revenue customer. "Mrs. Prescott, please allow me," he stammered. He then turned to Evelyn, his face now a mask of final impatient dismissal. "Mom, I have to ask you to step away from the desk. You are disturbing our guests. You are not coming in." "That is final. You are making a monumental mistake," Evelyn said. Her voice was no longer angry. It was flat calm and absolute. It was the voice she used in the boardroom just before she dismantled a faulty argument. "The only mistake," Rebecca hissed, "was thinking you could walk in here." "Enough!" Mr. Henderson stepped forward, puffing his chest out. "If you do not leave the vicinity of the lounge entrance, I will call airport security." The threat hung in the air, vibrating with unspoken, ugly meaning. A black woman being aggressive, disturbing guests, and refusing to leave. Evelyn knew exactly how that scenario would play out in the eyes of security. They wouldn't see a board director. They would see the stereotype Rebecca and Henderson were painting. Evelyn looked at Mr. Henderson's smug face. She looked at Rebecca's triumphant smirk. She looked at Mrs. Prescott, who had already turned her back and was walking back into the lounge, her point having been made. Evelyn did not sigh. She did not yell. She did not cry. She simply gave a single sharp nod. "I see," she said. She picked up the handle of her carry-on suitcase. She turned her back on them. The picture of defeat. Rebecca and Mr. Henderson shared a look of mutual victory. They had protected the standards of the Summit Lounge. They had put the woman in the hoodie back in her place. As Evelyn walked away, her phone was already in her hand. She was not looking for the airport security number. She was scrolling through her contacts to a name saved simply as Thomas Sterling, CEO. She paused. No, not yet. A call to the CEO would be emotional. This required something more. This was no longer a customer service complaint. It was a corporate crisis. She found the name she was looking for. Robert Vance, Corporate Secretary. She walked past a Starbucks, past a crowded gate area, and found a quiet corner by a window overlooking the tarmac. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Then she made the call. The phone picked up on the second ring. Dr. Reed. "Good morning. Are you at LHR? I see you're on the remote attendee list for the 10:00 a.m. Robert Vance was the corporate secretary of Transatlantic Airways. He was the man who organized the board, took the minutes, and knew where every single corporate skeleton was buried. He was precise, unflappable, and intensely loyal. Not to the CEO, but to the board itself. "I am at LHR," Robert Evelyn said, her voice steady. "But I am not as planned in the T5 conference suite. I am currently sitting on the floor by gate A14. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. Robert Vance did not do surprised or wise, he processed. "Please elaborate," he said, his voice clipped. "I was just denied entry to the Summit Lounge by the guest services supervisor, Rebecca, and the lounge manager, Mr. Henderson." Another silence. This one more electric. "Denied entry. On what grounds was your credential not—" "Oh, they didn't even get to my board credential, Robert," Evelyn said, a bitter laugh escaping her. "They didn't believe my first-class ticket was real. And when it was they decided my attire, jeans and a sweatshirt was a violation of their dress code and a threat to the lounge standards. I was threatened with airport security." She heard a sharp intake of breath. "Dr. Reed, Evelyn, are you alleging—" "I am stating," Evelyn cut in, her voice firm, "that I was racially profiled and publicly humiliated by Transatlantic Airways employees. I was also verbally harassed by another Platinum passenger, a Mrs. Prescott, whom your Mr. Henderson refused to manage as he was too busy siding with her against me." "My God," Robert whispered. This was not a customer complaint. This was a potential SEC violation, a breach of fiduciary duty, a director being blocked from attending a board meeting by the company's own staff. "Evelyn, I will call Thomas Sterling immediately. I will have security escort you." "No." Evelyn's voice was sharp. "You will do no such thing. A security escort just makes me look like the problem they claimed I was. And I don't want an apology from a terrified CEO. I want a reckoning." This is not an isolated incident, Robert. This is a symptom of a deep systemic rot that I have been talking about in our quarterly reviews for a year. Our customer satisfaction scores in minority demographics are abysmal. Now I know why. Our frontline management is actively hostile. What do you want to do? Robert asked. He knew that tone. Dr. Reed was no longer a victim. She was a strategist. First, Evelyn said, I need you to find out the full names of Supervisor Rebecca Manager Henderson and our guest, Mrs. Prescott. I want their histories, their complaint records, everything. You have an hour? Done. Second, I am still attending this meeting, but I need a secure location. Is the T3 Partner Lounge conference room available? The Vidian Lounge. Yes, it's empty. I'll have it provisioned for you. It's a bit of a walk. I can walk, Evelyn said grimly. Third, I want you to patch me into the 10:00 a.m. meeting 15 minutes early. Just me, you and CEO Thomas Sterling, no one else. Make that clear. Understood. And Robert, the agenda for today's meeting. We have that item on IT infrastructure failures. Yes. Item 6, we're adding item 7. Evelyn said, her eyes watching a TAA 787 push back from the gate. Item 7 is a catastrophic failure in brand integrity and operational oversight T5. And you will add my name as the presenter. Evelyn Roberts said, his voice tight with, was it admiration? That is aggressive. I was just accused of being aggressive, Evelyn replied. I might as well live up to the title. I will be at the T3 lounge in 20 minutes. She hung up. For a moment she sat there. The anger was a white-hot furnace in her chest. The humiliation still stung, but beneath it was something cold and hard. Resolve. This was not just an insult. It was data, and she was going to use it. She stood up, brushed herself off, and began the long walk from Terminal 5 to Terminal 3. It was a 15-minute journey via the transfer corridor, a sterile tunnel deep under the runways. With every step, she felt the transformation begin. She was no longer Evelyn, the tired traveller. She was Dr. Reed, the director. When she arrived at the Vidian Lounge in T3, the scene was a world apart. The manager, a sharp man named David, was waiting for her at the door. He must have gotten a call from Robert Vance. Dr. Reed, he said, his face a mask of perfect anxious professionalism. We have the conference room ready for you. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water? Would you like your suit pressed? All of the above. David, thank you, and I need access to the shower suite. Of course, this way. He didn't look at her clothes. He didn't question her. He saw her, and his system no doubt had flashed her status as a TA VIP. 25 minutes later, a different woman emerged from the conference room. The jeans and hoodie were gone, packed away in her suitcase. In their place was a bespoke dark navy blue suit tailored to perfection. Beneath it, a crisp white silk blouse. Her sneakers were replaced by low, powerful patent leather heels that made a sharp, decisive click on the marble floor. Her hair was immaculate. She retrieved her briefcase and took one final item from a protected sleeve. Her official laminated Transatlantic Airways Board of Directors badge. It was heavy, attached to a dark blue lanyard. She didn't put it on, not yet. She slipped it into her suit pocket. She sat at the head of the conference table, the TAA logo projected on the wall behind her. A fresh coffee was at her right, and her laptop was open. Robert Vance's encrypted file was on her desktop, containing the full employment and complaint histories of Rebecca Walsh and Martin Henderson. She was no longer a victim. She was a prosecutor, and court was about to be in session. At 9:45 a.m., the video conference link chimed. Thomas Sterling's face appeared on the 80-inch screen. He was in the New York boardroom, looking tanned and, as usual, slightly stressed. He was a numbers man, a former CFO, who had risen to the top job. Evelyn, Robert, glad you could join early. Evelyn, you're in T3. I thought you were. I was supposed to be in T5. Thomas, Evelyn said, her voice cutting through his pleasantries. But I was denied access to our own lounge. Thomas's smile froze. I'm sorry. What? Denied? Was the system down? That IT problem is... This was not an IT problem, Thomas. This was a people problem. Your people, specifically your lounge supervisor, Rebecca Walsh, and your lounge manager, Martin Henderson, at Terminal 5. Evelyn proceeded to lay out the events of the last hour. She did not raise her voice. She did not use emotional language. She delivered the facts as a series of data points. 1 initial contact, 9:02 a.m. 2 first denial based on assumption of non-premium travel. 3 second denial based on dress code jeans hoodie. 4 refusal to accept passenger's intent to change. 5 public admonishment by a third-party passenger, Mrs. Beth Prescott. 6 escalation by management siding with the third party. 7 final action. Threat to call airport security at 9:17 a.m. Thomas Sterling's face went from tanned to pale, then to a dark mottled red. She threatened to call security, he whispered his voice. On a board member on you. She didn't know I was a board member, Thomas. That's the entire point. She thought I was just a black woman who didn't belong in her precious lounge. She treated me like garbage. Her manager, Henderson, treated me like a criminal. I will have them fired today by noon. I am so sorry, Evelyn. This is horrifying. You will do nothing of the sort. Evelyn snapped. Not yet. Firing them is easy. It's a PR fix. It doesn't solve the problem. The problem is that they felt empowered to do this. They felt secure in their judgment. They looked at Mrs. Prescott, a wealthy white woman, and saw valuable customer. They looked at me and saw threat. That is a training failure. That is a culture failure. And it starts at the top. It starts with you. Thomas recoiled as if struck. That's not fair, Evelyn. We have DEI initiatives. You have pamphlets. Thomas, Evelyn said, her voice finally rising. You have glossy PDFs and a corporate slogan. You do not have a culture. You have a rot. And I am now item 7 on today's agenda. I am going to present this to the entire board, not as a personal complaint, but as a data-driven analysis of catastrophic brand risk. You can't, Thomas pleaded. It's an internal HR matter. Let me handle it. It will be unsimile. Unsimile, Evelyn laughed a harsh, humorless sound. It was unsimile to be told I was aggressive and disturbing guests while standing perfectly still. It was unsimile to be told to go to Starbucks. You will let me present my findings, Thomas, or I will call for a vote of no confidence in your leadership for actively suppressing a material risk from the board. Am I clear? Thomas Sterling, CEO of a $20 billion-less airline, visibly shrank. He knew Dr. Evelyn Reed. She did not bluff. Crystal, he muttered, wiping his face. Robert, get the rest of the board on the line. For the next 2 hours, Evelyn Reed was a force of nature. When the full board assembled, she presented her case. She put the complaint histories of Walsh and Henderson on the main screen. Henderson, it turned out, had 14 complaints filed against him for similar judgmental behaviour, 12 of which were from passengers of colour. Walsh had a similar, if shorter, record. They had been spoken to, but never formally disciplined. Evelyn then pivoted, linking this frontline behaviour to the airline's 12% drop in market share among a key demographic high-income black and minority travellers. We spend $50 million a year on marketing to get these customers, she said, her voice echoing in the New York boardroom. And in 10 minutes, one poorly trained, prejudiced manager can undo all of it. He didn't just lose me as a customer. He created a brand terrorist, someone who will and should tell every person they know about their experience. She proposed a motion not just to fire the employees, but for a full board-mandated top-to-bottom audit of all customer F-facing sensitivity and de-escalation training to be overseen by an independent third-party firm. And she added an immediate and permanent revocation of Mrs. Beth Prescott's TAA Platinum status. The vote was unanimous. Even Thomas Sterling, seeing the tide, voted aye. The meeting concluded at 12:05 p.m. Evelyn's flight to New York was at 1:30 p.m. Evelyn, Thomas said, his face haggarded. What are you going to do now? Evelyn began packing her briefcase. Now, she said, I'm going to get a glass of champagne. I have an hour to kill. Do you want me to send someone from corporate to T5 to escort you? Evelyn smiled. It was a cold, thin smile. No, Thomas. I don't need an escort, but I do think I'll be reintroducing myself to Mr. Henderson. He and I have some unfinished business. She closed her laptop, stood up, and for the first time looped the heavy board of directors lanyard around her neck. The badge settled heavily on the front of her silk blouse. Robert, she said to the air, will you do me a favor? Call T5. Tell Mr. Henderson that a member of the board is on site and is coming to the Summit Lounge for an impromptu inspection. Tell him she will be there in 10 minutes. With pleasure, Dr. Reed Roberts' voice replied. Evelyn picked up her carry-on, clicked her heels on the marble, and walked out of the T3 lounge. She began the 15-minute walk back to Terminal 5. This time, she wasn't defeated. She was armed. The walk back to Terminal 5 was different. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by a pulsing, righteous energy. Evelyn didn't feel the weight of her bag or the distance of the corridor. She felt the weight of the badge against her chest. She emerged into the bustling concourse of T5. It was now peak lunch hour and the terminal was a chaotic sea of people. She navigated the crowd with a singular focus, her eyes fixed on the gleaming glass sign that reads, Summit Lounge. As she approached, she could see a flurry of activity behind the reception desk. Mr. Henderson was there, frantically straightening his tie. Rebecca Walsh was standing beside him, her face pale, reapplying her lipstick with a shaky hand. A third employee was frantically wiping down the already spotless marble countertop. They had clearly gotten Robert's call. A board member was coming. They were preparing to put on their best, most obsequious smiles for whichever 60-year-old white man in a bespoke suit was about to walk through their doors. Evelyn slowed her pace deliberately as she made the final approach. Henderson was staring at the main walkway, scanning the faces of every man in a suit. Rebecca was fidgeting, smoothing her uniform. Evelyn stopped directly in front of the reception desk. They both looked at her, and for a fraction of a second, they didn't see her. Their eyes scanned right through her, still searching for the important person. Then recognition dawned. Rebecca's hand, the one holding the lipstick, froze halfway to her mouth. Her jaw went slack. She saw the jeans and hoodie from this morning replaced by the sharpest suit she had ever seen. She saw the tired, defeated woman replaced by a figure of absolute, terrifying authority. Mr. Henderson's eyes darted from Evelyn's face down to the lanyard. He read the words, Dr. Evelyn Reed, Board of Directors, Transatlantic Airways. All the blood drained from Martin Henderson's face. He looked in that moment as if he had seen a ghost. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. A small choking noise escaped his throat. Rebecca dropped her lipstick. It clattered onto the marble and rolled off the edge. Good, good, good. Henderson stammered, his body locked in a frozen half-bow. Evelyn said nothing. She simply stood there, letting the silence stretch, letting them truly see her. She let them drown in the realization of exactly what they had done. Rebecca, visibly trembling, was the first to speak. Mom, we whispered, her eyes wide with terror. I didn't know. You didn't know what Rebecca Evelyn's voice was quiet, but it cut through the terminal noise like a scalpel. That I was a board member, or that I was a human being deserving of respect. Which one exactly would have changed your behavior? Rebecca had no answer. She just stared, tears welling in her eyes. Not tears of remorse, Evelyn noted. Tears of pure, abject fear. Dr. Reed Henderson finally managed his voice a high-pitched squeak. A terrible misunderstanding. I am so mortified. Please come in. Come in. Let me get you some champagne. Whatever you want. He gestured frantically, trying to wave her in, as if a glass of champagne could fix this. Stop, Evelyn commanded. Her voice wasn't loud, but it had the authority of a general. Henderson froze his hand in midair. You, Mr. Henderson, Evelyn said, looking him dead in the eye. And you, Ms. Walsh, will not be getting me anything. You will not be serving any more guests today. Your employment at Transatlantic Airways is suspended effective, immediately pending a full HR investigation, which I will be personally overseeing. Suspended. Rebecca gasped, her hand flying to her chest. But my shift, Your shift is over, Evelyn said flatly. You threatened a passenger with security. You denied a ticketed first-class customer entry based on your own personal prejudice. You humiliated me, and in doing so, you humiliated this entire airline. No, please, Henderson begged. He was now openly sweating his suit jacket, straining. It was a mistake, a judgment call. Mrs. Prescott, she's a very difficult customer. I was just trying to keep the peace. You weren't keeping the peace, Evelyn said. You were choosing a side and you chose the wrong one. You assumed she was valuable, and I was disposable. You were incorrect. It turns out I am the one who reviews your performance metrics, and I am the one who sits on the compensation committee. You didn't make a judgment call. You made a career-ending decision. She looked at the other agent, Daniel, who was watching from his podium, his face ashen. Daniel, you will call airport security. Henderson and Rebecca both flinched violently. You will call airport security. Evelyn continued, her voice calm. And have them escort Miss Walsh and Mr. Henderson from the premises. They are not to have access to any TAA systems. Their badges are to be confiscated. Is that clear? Daniel, looking terrified but resolute, nodded. Yes, Mom. Dr. Reed, right away. Please, no. Rebecca was openly sobbing now. I have a mortgage. I didn't mean it. You're not what, Rebecca A., racist? Evelyn asked, her voice soft. You just play one at work. You and your manager here are the living, breathing definition of a material risk to this company, and I am here to mitigate that risk. She stepped past them through the glass doors she had been blocked from just hours before. She did not look back. She walked past the reception desk into the hushed, luxurious expanse of the Summit Lounge. Every head turned to watch this woman in the power suit, flanked by two sobbing, hysterical employees who were being told to gather their personal items. And in the quiet corner by the window sat Mrs. Beth Prescott. She was sipping another glass of champagne and reading a magazine. She looked up, annoyed by the commotion, her eyes landing onto Evelyn, her face contorted in confusion, then in pure, unfiltered rage. You, Mrs. Prescott shrieked, standing up so fast her chair nearly toppled. What are you doing in here? I told Henderson security. Someone get her out of here. Evelyn simply looked at her. She walked slowly, calmly across the lounge until she was standing directly in front of Mrs. Prescott's table. Mrs. Prescott, still shouting, finally noticed the badge hanging around Evelyn's neck. She stopped mid-rant. Her eyes squinted. She read the badge, her mouth snapped shut. Mrs. Prescott, Evelyn, said, her voice dangerously pleasant. Thank you for being such a valuable customer. I was the one who personally approved the motion just 1 hour ago to have your Platinum for Life status and all associated privileges with Transatlantic Airways and our partner alliances permanently and irrevocably revoked. Mrs. Prescott's face turned a shade of purple Evelyn had only ever seen in medical textbooks. You can't, she sputtered. It's already done. Evelyn said, you harassed another passenger. You contributed to a hostile environment. We have a zero-tolerance policy for that. Your behavior was, to use your own word, degrading to this lounge. Evelyn looked at her watch. My flight is in 1 hour. Your status is already void in our system. I suggest you finish your champagne and then find your way to the public terminal. I hear the Starbucks is quite comfortable. She left Mrs. Prescott standing there speechless and shaking in the middle of the lounge. Evelyn walked to the bar where a stunned bartender was watching. I'll have a glass of your best champagne. Dr. Evelyn Reed said to go. Evelyn boarded TAA 17 in exactly 45 minutes later. The purser, a man named Gregory, greeted her at the door of the 777. Good afternoon, Dr. Reed, he said, with a warm, genuine smile. Her VVIP status was clearly flagged on his manifest. A pleasure to have you with us. Can I take your coat champagne before takeoff? Thank you, Gregory, Evelyn said, handing him her suit jacket, and yes, champagne would be lovely. She settled into seat 1A, the spacious first-class pod at the front of the cabin. As she stowed her carry-on, she saw a new alert on her phone. It was an internal TAA press release, already drafted by the legal team and approved by Thomas Sterling, ready to be sent to all 70,000 TAA employees. Subject A, recommitment to our core values. It was a masterfully written piece of corporate spin, but the core message was blunt. It spoke of an unacceptable incident at LHR T5, where a valued passenger, it did not name Evelyn to her relief, was treated in a manner that is the antithesis of the TAA spirit. It announced the immediate suspension of the employees involved and a full top-to-bottom third-party audit of all lounge access and guest relations policies. It was signed, Thomas Sterling CEO and Dr. Evelyn Reed Board of Directors. Thomas had added her name, a clear signal to the entire company. She is the one. She is not to be trifled with. Evelyn smiled, powered off her phone, and accepted the crystal flute from Gregory. As the plane pushed back from the gate, she looked out the window at the grey, sprawling expanse of Heathrow. She thought of Rebecca and Henderson, now sitting in a sterile security office, their careers in ashes. She thought of Mrs. Prescott likely sitting on a hard plastic chair at Gate B32 fuming. The feeling wasn't triumph. It wasn't joy. It was a deep, profound, and weary sense of justice. It was the hard, cold karma of consequences. The flight to New York was smooth. Evelyn didn't sleep. She worked. She pulled out her laptop and began drafting the framework for the new training program she would propose. It wouldn't be about sensitivity. It would be about decentering, about teaching employees to see beyond their own biases. She titled the document the LHR Protocol. When they landed at JFK, she was the first one off the plane. She cleared customs in minutes thanks to her global entry, and her car service was waiting. As she was driven into the city, she felt the exhaustion she had been holding at bay for 24 hours finally crash over her, but it was a satisfying exhaustion. The next day, she was in the TIA headquarters boardroom in person. When she walked in, the entire board stood up. Thomas Sterling at the head of the table began to applaud. The rest of the room joined him. Evelyn Thomas said, his voice full of a new, genuine respect. "Welcome. The floor is yours." Evelyn nodded, took a seat, and opened her laptop. "Thank you, Thomas. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the LHR protocol. We have a lot of work to do. The karma that hit Rebecca Walsh and Martin Henderson wasn't just a single strike. It was a wave that washed their entire professional lives away. The investigation was swift and brutal. The security camera footage from the lounge entrance, which had crystal clear audio, confirmed every word of Evelyn's report. It showed her calm demeanor. It showed Rebecca's sneer, Henderson's dismissiveness, and Mrs. Prescott's aggressive posturing. It was so damning that TAA's legal department classified it as indefensible. Rebecca Walsh and Martin Henderson were fired for gross misconduct. Due to the nature of their dismissal, they were not eligible for severance. Their breach of fiduciary duty, endangering the company's reputation and standing with a board member, was noted in their records, effectively blacklisting them from any future senior roles in the airline industry. Rebecca, as Evelyn had guessed, lost her flat within 3 months. The last anyone heard, she was working a cash-in-hand job at a pub far from the airport. Martin Henderson tried to sue for wrongful dismissal. TAA's lawyers responded by threatening to countersue him personally for the financial damage to the brand. He dropped the suit immediately. He ended up selling his car and moving back in with his parents, his career in aviation over. But the most satisfying karma for many at TAA was reserved for Mrs. Beth Prescott. Losing her platinum status was more than an inconvenience. It was a social death. She lost her dedicated check-in, her priority boarding her lounge access, and her ability to upgrade. She was, for the first time in 30 years, just a regular passenger. The story leaked, as these stories always do, onto frequent flyer forums. A TAA employee, disgusted by the incident, posted an anonymous summary. The LHR T5 incident became a legend. Mrs. Prescott's name was eventually pieced together. She became a pariah, not just on TAA, but on all its partner airlines who, citing the passenger-on-passenger harassment clause, upheld the ban. She had built her identity on being better than everyone else. Now she was just another person in the security line, forced to take her shoes off with the rest of the world. For Evelyn, the karma was of a different kind. It was positive and it was powerful. Her LHR protocol was not just a suggestion. It became the new global standard for TAA. She spearheaded the initiative, taking a temporary executive role to oversee its implementation. It was a revolutionary training program. It used virtual reality scenarios to put managers in the shoes of passengers from different backgrounds. It taught them to recognize their own implicit biases in real time. It removed discretion on dress codes, entirely replacing it with a simple, clear policy. If a passenger holds a valid premium ticket, they belong. Full stop. The TAA Summit Lounge at Heathrow T5 was shut down for a full week. The entire staff was retrained, and those who failed the new certification were moved to non-custo-facing roles. 1 year later, Dr. Evelyn Reid was flying through Heathrow again. She was on her way to the same Lagos summit. As she approached the lounge, she saw the new sign. It was no longer the Summit Lounge. It was now the Reid Concourse, named in her honor by the board. The manager at the desk was a young, sharp woman named Amara, whom Evelyn had personally mentored. "Dr. Reid." Amara smiled, scanning her pass. "Welcome back. Your usual cabana is ready and we have the reports you requested for your flight." Evelyn smiled. "Thank you, Amara. Everything running smoothly like clockwork, Mum." Amara said, "The new protocols are working perfectly. Our customer satisfaction scores here are the highest in the entire network." Evelyn nodded. She walked through the glass doors, which slid open without hesitation. The lounge was bright, busy, and welcoming, and in the corner she saw a man in a tracksuit, a young woman in a hijab, and a businessman in a suit, all coexisting. She had been denied entry because they thought she didn't belong. Now the entire space belonged to her. That was the hardest and most righteous karma of all. The story of the Reid Concourse became a legend within Transatlantic Airways, a modern-day parable taught to every new hire. It was a story about what happens when arrogance meets authority and when prejudice is confronted with power. Dr. Evelyn Reid's role on the board grew. She was no longer just the logistics expert. She became the conscience of the airline. She proved that inclusivity wasn't just a buzzword. It was a business imperative. It was a shield against liability and a magnet for a new diverse and loyal customer base. The airline's market share in the very demographics they had been losing began to climb slowly at first and then rapidly. The LHR protocol was so successful, it was studied by TAA's competitors who scrambled to create their own versions. Evelyn had not only fixed her own airline, she had started to fix the entire industry. She still traveled in her hoodie and jeans. It was her own personal test. She would walk up to lounge desks around the world, and every time she was greeted with a smile. The agents no longer saw her clothes. They saw a customer. They saw the legacy of Rebecca Walsh and Martin Henderson, a legacy of failure that no employee ever wanted to repeat. E-coms from her actions had reshaped the company. Thomas Sterling, the CEO, had become her most ardent supporter, recognizing that her catastrophic failure had actually been a gift, a wake-up call that saved the airline from a slow creeping death by irrelevance. Daniel, the young agent who had nervously watched the original confrontation, was now the manager of the Reid Concourse. Evelyn had seen his discomfort and his quiet dissent, and she had promoted him. He ran the lounge with a firm but compassionate hand, ensuring that every person who walked through the door felt not just permitted, but welcomed. Evelyn sat in her seat 1A, always 1A on another flight, looking out the window as the world unrolled beneath her. She had been denied a moment of comfort, a shower, and a quiet space. In return, she had taken a system, broken it down to its rotten foundations, and rebuilt it from scratch. The hard karma that had fallen on Rebecca Henderson and Prescott was not about revenge. Evelyn took no pleasure in their individual ruin. The real karma was the systemic change. It was the fact that because of what they did, no black woman, no person of color, no one deemed other would ever stand in front of a TAA lounge desk and be made to feel small again. Evelyn had been refused entry to the lounge, so she returned not just as a passenger, but as its architect. She hadn't just demanded a seat at the table. She had redesigned the entire room, and in doing so, had ensured that the table was open to everyone. The karma that hit Rebecca and Mr. Henderson wasn't quiet. It was foundational. They weren't just fired, they were made a real-life example of what happens when prejudice becomes policy. Dr. Evelyn Reed's incredible story proves that the most powerful response to being denied a seat isn't just to demand one, but to return as the person who owns the entire table. Her victory wasn't just for her. It was for everyone who has ever been judged by their cover, patronized by someone with a little bit of power, or made to feel like they don't belong. This is a true lesson in quiet strength and ultimate vindication. What do you think of this incredible real-life story of justice? Have you ever witnessed karma hit back this hard? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in justice. Share it to spread this powerful message and subscribe to our channel for more true stories of drama and hard karma.